Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we've got a great audio interview today. This one is with Callahan, and he is the head of the project that is converting ChromeOS, or actually in this case the open source Chromium OS, I always get corrected, over to the Raspberry Pi. And we featured that thing that he's doing in our Raspberry Pi 3 review I did about a week or two ago. So in the interview we're going to talk about the project, how it got started, what their plans for the future are. He's also going to talk about some other single board computers they're trying to get this version of ChromeOS ported over to. So a fun interview coming up. If you want to listen to this in audio format, I have my podcast feed available just about to every podcast application out there, including iTunes and Google and many others. So if you want to listen on the road, definitely check it out. I have an archive of all of my interviews on there. So without further ado, here is Callahan talking to me. All right, so joining me now is Callahan, who is the founder of this project called Chromium OS for all SBC. Very descriptive. So Dylan, I guess this solved a problem for you, right? This was how this came about, that you needed to solve a problem that wasn't getting solved, so you undertook this yourself, right?
Yeah. Well, where it really began was my mom's a school teacher, and they were thinking about getting Chromebooks. And I was thinking, okay, that's a lot of money, $200 a Chromebook. And I just kind of decided, Raspberry Pi, I'd been tinkering around with it for a while. And I just decided that it was more feasible to try and get it to run on cheaper hardware than it would be for them to go out and get a bunch of Chromebooks.
Right, because it's $35 plus whatever, versus $200 for a Chromebook. And chances are these kids probably have a TV and a keyboard at home they could plug in or something.
Exactly.
Right? And so that started the whole thing. Now, how come no one did this before? It just seems like it's such a no-brainer to have Chromium or Chrome OS running on.
It was attempted on the original Pi. The great developer Hexa. I hope I got that right.
Yeah, that's his name. Yep.
Okay.
Well, that's what he goes by.
He did a beta version, but it had C faults, which wouldn't let it load properly.
So this is not easy then to do this. This is not just taking some drive image.
This is a lot of trial and error.
And talk about some of the error involved with this. How long did it take you to get this working?
I spent probably 5 months researching, working on it to try and get just the first ones to run.
So it really took a lot. And I guess now, so people understand, Chrome OS is the commercial version of what you're working on.
Exactly.
Chromium OS is what you're porting. And this is an open source project that Google maintains. Is that how this works?
Yeah. One thing we really like about it as a team is that it's bleeding edge, meaning that the software is always being updated. Which
means it probably crashes your hardware all the time, right?
Yeah. Whenever there's a new update, that's one of the errors that you were talking about, just getting it to be stable on R49 took a lot of work. And because what happens is it builds packages, and when it builds the packages, it either fails or it succeeds. If it succeeds, you have a good chance of that image booting. But if it fails, you really are kind of out of luck.
So every time Google makes a change,
that file.
And every time Google makes a change, you have to go and essentially not go back to the drawing board, but really have to put it through a major set of testing to make sure it's going to work on your hardware then, I guess.
Yeah.
So this is not an easy process. So this was really began out of a need. Your mom had an issue where...
Well, actually, if you want to get really technical...
Yeah, let's do it.
It started on Reddit, go figure.
Okay. That's right, because you didn't have a website. I found you through Reddit. Somebody had linked to from another subreddit.
We just now got the website. We've been very gracious. It was kind of one of those things where we didn't want to ask for money because it is an open source project. But now we're finding out, electrical costs and stuff like that to run the servers that we have, to build the software, to run the website and all that. It does take, a few dollars here and there. But started on Reddit, where I befriended our marketing and public relations guy, Steven. And Steven and I built the first prototype build.
And that ran on a Raspberry Pi 2 or on the original?
On the 2.
Because the original is a little too slow for this, I would imagine, right?
It is very slow, and that's going to make the 0 port tricky. But we've been able to get some decent... How do I put it? We're making progress on it.
Got it. And just so people are aware, the Zero is the $5 Raspberry Pi, which is actually faster than the original $35 Pi, right? It's a little bit faster, but not as fast as the 2 or the 3. So, right, they keep tweaking everything. So, and so you did this, and now is your mom using this in the school now? Is this something she's been able to make use of?
Yeah, she's used 2 of them, just to to see what the kids like. One thing they don't like about it is that Flash games really don't work on task.
Right. Which is good. Which is probably good for her, but bad for the kids, right? Because they want the Flash games. Now, so do you have a background in coding? Obviously.
I actually have a background in broadcasting.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a couple credits away from getting a degree in broadcasting.
Oh, so you're still going to school and you're doing this in your spare time? Yeah. And so
all of us have full-time jobs that are working on this project. We just do it in our free time.
Right, just putting it together, and the only ones doing it, which is, I'm still so amazed that nobody's really taken up this challenge, and I guess it really was very difficult. So, so walk us through what it takes to port Chromium OS over to this little tiny computer here. You have to grab that source code, right? I'm guessing it's not compiled to run on the processor that the Raspberry Pi is running. Do you have to do a lot of porting?
This is where I love the Raspberry Pi Foundation, is that all of their source code is open source for compiling for their kernels. So that was without that, there wouldn't be the project at all.
So because they've opened up their source for you to port another open source project over, you can kind of look under the hood here and see exactly how everything connects, I guess.
Exactly. And it's only going to get better with the 4.5 kernel having it integrated. Because we were using a video driver for KMS and DRM.
Mm-hmm.
You ever heard of them?
No. Tell me more about this.
It's hardware acceleration.
Okay.
So Eric Olsner, I'm butchering the name, I know. You can find him on GitHub. I mean, you can probably link it in the video or the interview. But he has done some amazing work with the open source, getting a open source version of the Broadcom drivers.
And they've been notorious for not making their drivers accessible to the open source community, Broadcom. Is that the problem? Yep. And now they're getting out of the Wi-Fi business altogether, so I guess that's probably why.
Yeah.
So you had to get these open source drivers. You had to get all this stuff converted.
Then it goes into a process of creating what we call an overlay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, an overlay is basically just a blueprint. We have all of that's open source, so you and any person that has the time and the machinery can compile the code yourself, make any adjustments that you want to make to it. So the overlay, it draws on it's just blueprints, basically, for how the source code gets built for the Raspberry Pi platform.
And that's something the Raspberry Pi Foundation maintains? Or you did that?
The overlays, they do not, but the kernel sources that we use for compiling the kernel, because that's the most important part of this whole process, is having a stable kernel to work off of.
Right, and the kernel is essentially the core of the operating system that this thing boots from, right? And that's the drivers, that's the video, that's what to do when it boots. Mm-hmm. And so the kernel of this build that you've made, I guess, so are you kind of grafting perhaps a Raspberry Pi kernel onto what happens in a Chromium OS after it boots, or is this running with a lot of Google code also on the boot up side?
On the boot side, it's mainly just kernel, and then it loads the Google stuff as it's booting up.
I see. So you've taken kind of the Raspberry Pi base, essentially, to some. I'm trying to simplify this, but right, you've taken that and then bringing in the Google stuff to make it run the Chromium components after.
One issue we've had, which there's developers out there that want to help, is we can compile newer kernels to work, but it only works on the dev console, so you don't get a GUI. The log screen. That's the things. That's why we're based on 4.28 instead of the latest 4.5.
So you just can't get 4.5 to boot on the current hardware, so you're kind of stuck there at the moment.
completely successfully.
Got
We
it.
can get it to boot, we just can't get it to be usable.
And that's part of the fun, I guess, is just trying to get this stuff to shoehorn into something else, right?
Exactly.
So what are the challenges? So did you have you ever done anything on the Raspberry Pi before, or was this your first big project into
This
the
is
Raspberry?
the first big project.
And so far, it's been doing pretty well. So we both got on Lifehacker this week. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I did.
So that's probably brought a lot of
Steven was
downloads.
freaking out about that.
and the worst part is that it brings downloads, and then it brings a lot of people asking, "How do I get it to work?" So
Yeah.
you might have to deal with that also. So tell me about. So we know where the build is at right now. We looked at it in the video. So when you watch that video, you said there's a whole bunch of stuff that you know will be happening soon with future revisions of this. What are some of the things that you see immediately will be improved over time with this build?
Well,
I would imagine it could probably run faster, right? If you get some optimization
Yeah, the
done.
first major thing is going to be converting the source code and the final compiled files to be 64-bit. Because right now they're all 32.
And that, I guess, the Raspberry Pi 3 has the 64-bit processor.
Yes, but the 32-bit files will work on it.
Right. So, and is there a performance advantage for going 64-bit over 32?
In my opinion, yes, but it really just comes down to it's like having when Windows switched from 32-bit to 64.
Right. New is just better.
Yeah. So that's one of the major performance things that I think is really going to help push it. Also, as soon as we can get the kernel issue figured out, the 4.5, that has the built-in, takes full advantage of the GPU.
Oh, so we'll see some really significant speed up then in page rendering and just overall graphics.
Yeah, we had like a pretty good freak out when we found out that was going to be included in the 4.5, mainline.
Right, so it opens up a lot of things that you don't have to code yourself or try to figure out yourself. You can kind of just hook into.
Well, it means we can stop basing ourselves on Eric's old kernel, and we can go with the mainline kernel.
And then you've got something really. So how much faster do you think it's going to be?
I mean, I'd have to benchmark it and all that. I did love your Octane benchmark that you did and how low it was.
Right. Because you right. You have to start from somewhere, right?
We were really proud to get like a score like that when we did a bunch of the last improvements to the kernel.
And what's neat is that, I took a look at that Remix OS PC, which is that little mini PC that Remix is making.
Yeah.
And that one actually has the same processor as the new Raspberry Pi does. I'm sure they have different components around it, but
yeah.
For, the baseline. So it's actually pretty close to where they are with their thing too. So it's not too far behind. But I would imagine, looking at that, do you think you can make it run faster?
Yes and no. They have their limitations hardware-wise. So we're always going to be, at our best, 70% of what a Chromebook could be.
Right.
Just based off the fact that we won't have 2 gigs of RAM. We won't have, processor speed got up there, but we're still not where, a normal Chromebook is.
Right. Although next year you could be when they rev the hardware again, right? Because it's really amazing when you think about where the Raspberry Pi started only 3 or 4 years ago to where it is now. It's amazing, isn't it? It's really it's mind-boggling when you think about the performance increases for the same price. And so, how long have you been playing with the Raspberry Pi? Obviously, this is not something you just woke up one day and decided I'm just going to play with this. So I'm sure this platform must have interested you before.
I really like the idea of what you could do with a low-powered computer. I know that sounds kind of simple, but that's really what it came down to, was that I saw that it had Kodi, I saw that it had all these other different programs you could run, and I wanted to tinker. I wanted to mess around with them.
And I guess that's their whole mission, is to let people just start tinkering with them and see what they can come up with. It's really something. I've been, it's been amazing about the whole low end of the spectrum here is how much computer you can get for the money. And what really attracted me to your project, actually, it's the mission that you set out for, which was an education mission, which was to try to figure out a way to make something simple for people to use. Because the Raspberry Pi is easy to use for the most part, but you really have to find somebody who knows what they're doing to get you started, because you really are booting up to a Linux desktop, which is not complicated anymore for someone, but it's not as easy as ChromeOS is, right?
Yeah, the Chrome operating system, I mean, everyone's gone to the Best Buy or the computer store and had somebody try and sell them a Chromebook. Mm-hmm. Just because Chromebooks they're simple. You can browse the web, you can do your social media, you can take care of what you need to take care of if you're just a simple web user. And I think that's the market that we're really aiming for, is people that just want to browse the web, watch a YouTube video here and there. I mean, in some instances, people have been able to get IDEs to even work on it.
Right. No, it's if you can get it on there, it's going to run pretty well now. It's really been impressive to see where it's been going. And so, have you ever met the people you're working with on this project?
No. Hans lives in Iceland.
Okay.
Steven lives on the East Coast. And we've got some new people that we're trying out. And they're from all over the world as well.
It's just it's amazing. It's just like every open source project, right? It's people find each other and they develop this interest and they get involved with it.
Hans found me on the Chromium Reddit forum.
Right, so everyone kind of
like,
coalesced.
Hey, I love what you do, and he was talking all this Chrome stuff that was way over my head, and I'm like, I need you to work on this project with me.
So you knew what you wanted to do. This guy, you couldn't understand what he was saying, but you knew what he was talking about. So you brought him in there. So what are some of the challenges in starting up something like you're doing here? Because every open source project obviously attracts new people. People get really interested in it, and then you really need to find a way not only to manage the project but manage the people. So you mentioned that you're trying out people. What are some of the things that you're doing to try to make sure the project stays focused with all this new help coming in?
That's a tough question, but what it really comes down to is we want people that have a passion for making the product that we give people, which is a simple, easy to use operating system. We're not in it to make money. We're not in it for glory and fame. I mean, when it comes down to it, this is a hobbyist project in the simplest of terms.
Right. So you've got to, you want to find people that share a passion and certainly don't want to create a path that...
As soon as somebody starts asking me, like, they have like a Kickstarter idea for it, I'm
right.
Like,
yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's just it's the road to it's a disaster sometimes, especially in the crowdfunding world. So that's certainly going to be an issue. Has anyone from Google or anyone reached out to you yet?
No, thank God.
And why do you say that?
Because I was really afraid I would do this, and then Google would be like, "Hey, you can't do that."
Oh, really? So you think they would have it? Well, I guess who knows? I mean, there could be something in there that might be an issue or not. But I mean, generally, that's what they want people to take this open source thing and experiment with it, right? Is that their goal?
Yeah, that's true. I think for me, on a personal level, I just thought I'm making a cheap Chromebook. Mm-hmm. And if I was a company that sold Chromebooks, I wouldn't want somebody
messing around with
cheaper ones. It kind of reminds me of there was this guy in Florida years ago. I'm kind of going to get off subject.
That's okay. Yeah.
He started making Hackintosh Macintoshes.
Right.
And he got busted for it, of course. But we're never going to... that's like the gift, is that it's an open source project and that it's Chromium, not Chrome.
Right. And there's another group out there that's been taking they've been taking Chromium OS and they're installing it on older PCs. I'm sure you've seen this group out there. I forgot the name of it. People keep telling me about it.
Yeah, we actually reached out to them.
Okay, but they're charging people. I mean, if you're a business or a school, they're charging license fees for it.
Yeah, that's the price of their service, I guess.
Yeah. Right. Like that's exactly what they're doing is, selling it as a service. So, and it looks like Google so far has been okay with them. I guess they must see it as like, it could be competitive, although there's not a huge market for it. So, if it gets people interested in Chrome OS on a less powerful device or an older device, that when they go out and shop for a new one, maybe they'll find
Chrome. If they have
a
positive experience with one variation of it, what would stop you from trying it in a newer, better form?
And in Google's case, certainly their profit motive is just getting their browser in front of people because they make money on the advertising that they're pushing at you too. So that's probably
But like I said, I actually reached out to them.
Yeah.
And I was trying to see if maybe they could lend some information on how they've got Netflix to work and some of the other things. And I just got a straight answer. We don't want anything to do with ARM boards.
That's it. You ARM people, go.
Yeah, go away.
Right? That's really nice of them. Yeah. So now, do you see? I saw on your website that this is the first stage, that we've got the Raspberry Pi done. You had some other single board computers listed on your site. The Raspberry Pi Zero being another one. Are there other single board computers that really interest you that you think people should be thinking about looking at just to have if they're into this?
Geekbox.
The Geekbox. Tell me more about the Geekbox.
It is an octa-core processor, rock chip, and the price is a little high. I think it goes for $109.
Even that's still a pretty good deal, right?
Yeah, but it's the same processor that Chromebooks actually run on.
Yeah, that's right. Because I've used, I've looked at a couple of Chromebooks now. The Asus Flip uses the rock chip.
Yeah. So they were nice enough to send us some our way, so we can get working on that.
And is it a significantly different thing to try to port to a rock chip? I mean, they're all the same basic ARM core, or is there a lot that has to still be done? Is it more driver issues that you've run into?
It's really just creating the overlay and then trial and error. I
love their marketing here. I'm looking at their website here. It says they have an SUV-like appearance.
Yeah.
Now, tell me about the rock chip a little bit, because we've seen it on some of the Chromebooks. I also have a little game console from GPD called the GPD XD, which is a little Android console that I use for emulation and whatnot. The rock chip is a.
You have to give me a link to that.
Oh, you haven't seen that one?
I have not.
It was one of my top 10 products of 2014 or 2015. It's great. It looks like a Nintendo DS.
Does it?
And the rock chip is fast enough to basically get you covered right through like the Sony PlayStation era of emulation. So the chip, the chips, those rock chips are fast. And I was curious just to get your take on it. Compare it obviously to what's in a Raspberry Pi. The rock chip is much faster. So what are they doing on that chip differently that makes that so much better than what you might get for $35 on a Raspberry Pi? Is it just a newer design?
Speed and cores, basically.
Mm-hmm. So it's got 8 cores in it essentially.
Yeah.
And so that speeds it up quite a bit. So it seems like you guys are gonna be pretty busy, continuing this project as it moves along. Are you finding it's gonna be hard to work on so many different platforms, or are you just trying to take it one step at a time?
I think our hardest part was narrowing it down to 5.
And so tell me about that. So what were some of the things that eliminated other single board computers from your list?
Specs, really. When it came down to it, it was just some had great specs, some had horrible ones.
And what has happened since this kind of got released to the wild? Because this really only began, at least the public face side of it, really only started around December when you released your first build. So what's it been like for you guys trying to manage your lives and now having this open source project that's taken off?
It's really been interesting. We don't really look at it as a project, really, that, we have deadlines and stuff. It's just, it's like going to the bar with your buddies. You hang out, you talk. I mean, some of our dev talk that we do on some of the communication that we do, it's, like, hey, how's your wife doing today?
Right.
You've become friends with these people. And at the same time, it's cool that we can have a personal friendship with each other while still working on the major project.
That really helps, because if you like the people you work with, there's actually a compelling reason to keep working on it versus having to deal with people you don't like. So it's a voluntary merging of the minds here. So that seems to be helping there. So what's next? I mean, what do you have planned? I guess you have a new build coming, right?
Yes.
And what,
0.5. The only issue is, maybe people can send some emails. Pi Hut hasn't sent. I ordered 3 zeros for all of us, and we've only gotten 1. And I ordered 3 Raspberry Pi 3s, and we've only gotten none.
really, from Pi Hut?
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they're listening and they will get you your Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
I've been trying. So what happened was I got a Zero. My sister-in-law lives in Boston, so she got me a Raspberry Pi Zero.
In the magazine, or?
No, she got it at Micro Center, which is a local place. I guess they're like the regional.
I want to go there so bad.
Apparently,
Ethan's always talking about how nice Micro Center is, how it's just like a giant toy store for adults.
Yeah. And I've never been in one. My sister-in-law went to it. She's not she supports my habits, but she's not into them as I am, So she told me all about it, but she didn't feel like it was a place for her. But it sounded like the place for me. But she mailed me the Raspberry Pi Zero in an envelope without actually any protection on it. So it came it didn't look broken, but it does not boot. So I have to get another one, but they've been so hard to get.
Yeah.
The stock has not been there.
I think I got the email at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had to use different transaction methods because they wouldn't let me pick just one. They wouldn't let me order more than one.
It feels like they did it because they could, right? It doesn't seem like they're real. That there's a. I'm sure they're selling it at cost, which I'm sure, even though they're nonprofit, I'm sure there's a little bit of margin built into the other Raspberry Pis to help finance the foundation.
They just moved to like a new headquarters or something.
Yeah, they're growing. It's really well. What's amazing, I'm not sure how old you are, but I remember the days when we had the Commodore 64s and the Apple IIs when I was a kid, and
I have a vintage Apple II.
Oh, good. Which one do you have? The Apple II, like the actual Apple II?
Apple IIL, I believe.
The 2L or maybe the 2C?
2C, yeah, it's the C.
It's the little portable one, right?
Yeah, I don't have a screen or anything, but I just have the box itself.
So, that was back in the day where you could hook up a computer to your television set. That's how most people had them. And in fact, a lot of my friends had the Commodore 64, and it was almost treated like a game console. This was used on the floor. That was how they worked. And they really wanted to get back to that with the Raspberry Pi, that this thing that you could have and you can plug it in, and there's no, once you turn it off, it's done. You can reset it and put a different disk in, and you boot it back up again, and it really brings back a lot of those memories for me, which is what I was so excited about your project, is that this is exactly the kind of stuff that should be happening on this platform. So it's really good to see that. So I'll ask the inevitable question: when is the next build coming out? Or do you not want to say it?
Hopefully, as soon as we get our Pi 3s, so we can test the builds that we've made for them.
Cool. So
we're just waiting on them to come in the mail.
All right, so talk about porting, because obviously there's a lot of single board computer manufacturers that are going to be after you to put this on there. And, I would imagine porting Chromium OS to a single board computer is a lot like what I do here on the channel, which is, I can't cover everything. You obviously can't port to everything. I would imagine you have to narrow it down to platforms that have some degree of user base behind them, because even though they might run on the same chip, they could be completely different from another one, right?
Correct. What's nice is a lot of them, some companies, they have their processor is the same for every product that they have. Other companies, it's a different processor for every single board.
So it's a completely different computer every time they come out with something else.
Yeah.
And really, I think just, from the way I see it, and based on what I have to think about when I'm doing one of my reviews here on the channel, is that, I really can't spend a lot of time on things that don't have a real reach to them, that there's not a big user base behind it. So obviously you picked right with the Raspberry Pi.
Trying to focus at. That's why we were able to narrow it down to just 5 that we're really going to focus on, is because we want to reach the biggest base of consumers. We don't want to spend 2 weeks on a board that no one owns.
Right, of course not. It's a waste of your time. So which 5 are they again? So we have the Raspberry Pi 3 and 2, the Pi Zero,
the Cube box, the chip, and I believe the last one is the Pine 64.
And the chip is something interesting. I've got one of those coming. That was a Kickstarter, another successful one. What happened was they built the $9 computer, right? So then that's what prompted Raspberry Pi to say, well, you can do 9, we'll do 5. Right?
Yeah.
So now my chip cost a lot more than 9 because in order to get a display hooked up to it, I had to buy the HDMI module. So that brought it right back to like $25-$30. But
yeah.
It
have that. I was actually someone on the Reddit channel, the subreddit was nice enough to send me one.
Oh, cool. So how is it?
That's the one that we've been working with and testing.
So how does that compare to the Raspberry Pi in performance, would you say?
It's very comparable to the Zero. Right off the top of my head, I cannot remember if it's an all-winner. Maybe you can double check that real quick.
I can take a look and see. Yeah, it looks like it says an R8 processor. So it might be an all-winner.
I can actually go take a look real quick. But
that's okay. But so you think performance-wise, it's like right. It's not as fast as the Pi 3, but probably somewhere in between the original Pi and the 2.
Correct.
So it's pretty decent. It's got 512 megs of RAM, right? So it's capable.
One of the things that's going to really hinder us from porting to a lot of these boards also is the all-winner processors.
So those are not as
Do you have a background any on them?
Well, I know they're a Chinese brand, right?
Yeah. They
and
don't
so
like following rules.
Oh, so they have some of their own ways of doing things that may go against perhaps what the ARM standards are usually?
Yeah, there's a certain violation that they have. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But a lot of companies, which I was really shocked to find out that some boards are still using them.
Oh, so they actually have run afoul of the ARM license?
I believe so.
Oh, interesting. So that could be an issue. So I'll have to look a little bit further into that. It's probably why we're seeing so much of the rock chip out there now, because that's been kind of moving into that space a little bit. So let's just wrap up by asking you. So if somebody wants to get involved with the project, I mean, we certainly can direct people to download it, but I would imagine you're also looking for people to help with the development tasks. What's the process for someone to get in touch with you guys to try to contribute something if they have something to offer? What's your
The process is really simple. Send an email to me, Steven, or Hans. Our emails are on the website.
And what's the website?
It is ChromiumOS for SBC.
.org. Great. So they can check you out there, leave you all a note. And I'm sure over the last couple of weeks, it's been, I'll take some of the credit, not all of it, but you've probably been getting a lot of outreach, I would imagine, from folks.
Yeah. Right now, we're trying out some people, so there's not readily available spots. But if you have a really good resume, and when we say resume, we mean you have passion for it, you're not looking for money from it, you're not looking for fame, and that you have skills that we need, then there's a really good chance that we would love to have you work on the project.
And you have GitHub links here also, so if somebody was just interested in tinkering around with it and try to improve things,
they can try.
Yeah, they can just do it right now. They can get involved in
daily almost.
Oh, great. So there you go. So you can check them out at ChromiumOS for SBC.org. Dylan, anything else to add before we wrap up?
Have fun with your SBCs.
Great. Yeah, I'm going to be playing around with it a lot more over the next couple of weeks. And maybe what we'll do is when you have a new update that has some significant changes to it, let's do another profile.
Sounds great.
Great. Well, Dylan, thank you very much for joining us on the channel. And this is Lon.TV, and thanks for watching. This channel is brought to you by my Patreon supporters, including gold level supporter Shabib. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.